Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron, I hope you're having a great day or night in Jesus. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to talk to us today how if we're not careful, and I think it's this way in many places, that Greek has replaced Latin as the new holy language. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. Again, thanks for being with us. You know, for millennia, you had the complaint is that the Roman Church did much of their preaching, teaching, ceremonial rites, the Mass in Latin. And so even in many countries where Latin was not spoken. So you had people that would sit out in the pews and hear all this strange language and not understand what was going on. And then the Bible in the vernacular, sometimes they really didn't promote that. They did, it was only for the wealthy classes or people that could afford it. And so you had the Bible, the Latin Vulgate, to people who many times were either illiterate or illiterate in Latin. And so this was a huge thing in a Protestant Reformation about what's going on, that we need the Bible in the vernacular so people can understand it. But I've seen that it's, I guess, just human nature, or maybe it's a trick of Satan, that we've kind of got back to that now, that Greek is the new holy language. Like you'll read a Bible, let's say the King James, I've got a King James right here, reading the King James Bible, and people say that really doesn't mean that. The Greek says. Well, and what's so odd about that, most of the time they don't know Greek. They may have a Greek lexicon or 5 on their Logos Bible software or their Biblia or whatever, tons of Bible software that are out there. Accordance is a good one as well. BibleSoft over the years, Quick Verse, the Nav Press one, what was that, Word Study? I mean, there's just so many. Of course, Sword Searcher, eSword, Blue Letter Bible, Bible Hub, you can go there. And so they don't know Greek. Or if they do, they just kind of know a cursory knowledge of Greek. And let me give you an example of something. I was just doing a Biblical Archaeology Today podcast with Steve Waldron. It's on Anchor and Spotify and some others. Appreciate those of you that listen. Encourage you to listen if you don't. It comes on daily, sometimes twice daily. Just all things biblical archaeology. So we're doing the Megiddo floor mosaic. And in Greek, it says something to the effect of Jesus is God. So I'm using just as the base text in this particular time. I've done 2 or 3 podcasts on it, but this particular one is that wonderful book by Holden and Geisler on Popular Handbook of Archaeology in the Bible. And he goes into how these, I think it's 4 Greek words, could be translated at least 3 different ways. And that's the rub. Context is king in translating Greek and Hebrew, especially Hebrew with no vowel points in it. And so there is some conjecture. And so like the King James translators, for example, they had by and large studied Greek and Hebrew for 20, 30, 40 years, and that was basically their whole job. They did do some preaching and pastoring. They were supported by the king. It's made very clear in the Epistle Dedicatory and also the translators to the reader, among other historical sources. And so they're just doing this so they knew how to translate. Well, Greek's the new holy language. You can't read the Bible in English because you have to know Greek. And then the way you're taught Greek is not the way that people in the first century learned Greek. They did not, in first century terms, they didn't know what pluperfect was or third person, singular, aortive, or aorist tense and all of this. They didn't know any of those things. And so then you've got Greek laws of Greek language kind of superimposed on a language that those laws did not exist per se. And so then you can begin to twist the Bible to say whatever you want it to. Instead of the plain sense of the English when it's translated. And this reason you want unbiased translators and people who just want to give the original sense of the text and what was God speaking when he did these things. So if you're not careful, Greek can become the new Latin, that nobody can understand their Bible unless you know Greek. And then you have the high priesthood of people who may have studied Greek or taught it for 12 years, like a Pete Ruckman for 45 years, but he would never do this to my knowledge. He always just said, well, no, the English translation is right. And then he had an IQ of like 195 to boot. But so we have to go to the Greek scholars, and then you have to go into the biases of the Greek scholars, and then you have to go into the contradictions of the Greek scholars, and then the different possibilities, and then you get into the Heisenberg uncertainty principle of quantum physics. I mean, nobody knows anything about what's going on, and so there's no more sure word of prophecy. And so again, if you're not careful, we can turn the Greek language into this special Latin language that nobody knows, and that the pastors all get up and begin quoting Greek, and nobody in the congregation knows Greek, and then you have special power over them. And it's the Nicolaitan, whatever that means. I mean, it means victory of the laity, but even that word, Nicolaitan, either means victory of the laity over the ministry, or Nicolaitan, victory of the ministry over the laity. Victory of the laity, you've gotten dominance over them, you know, and knowledge puffeth up, and people, oh, you preach such a good message, and I have to come to you. I can't read my Bible in my lap every day and pray it and weep over it and memorize it for Bible quizzing, because you, the holy priesthood, only know the Greek language, and it's up to you to give infallible interpretation of what I'm trying to read here. And so we all know the King James Version has some archaic language and things in it. Great books out on that. Vance's book's probably the preeminent one on archaic words in the Greek language, but of the King James, but there's some other ones that are really good too. There's a dictionary out now from the 1828 Webster's. It's good. KJV dictionary. Holman has a good thing on it. Chick Publications, David Daniel, David Cloud has a good thing, on and so forth. So just be careful, and just something for you to consider. And normally, here's what happens. People watch a video of mine. They don't realize I've done over 5,000 videos. So they watch, this is the first time they've watched a video, or maybe the second or third time. And they're like, and then they quote and they write something, and they don't realize the context of the thousands of videos that I've done, and how we've gone in and out of various situations and thought processes and theologies and historical theologies and criticism and all this. And they just, well, you're against Greek, and that's nothing to be further from the truth. But I'm just saying, be very careful that you don't allow the Greek language to become the special cased language that is very uncertain, as we use the example, but you could use that in many, multiplied thousands of times, that the translation could be this or that or that. And this is the reason, like 9,000 times, I think, in the King James 1611, they would put the senses in the margin or alternate readings, because they said, we think it's this, but it could probably just as validly be translated that. And so they just tried honesty in that. And that's the beauty of, like, the, is it the Westminster Bible? Is Schuyler had one. I think Trinitarian Bible Society makes one, because they kept all those. Westminster's got like 200,000 references in it. So anyhow, you can have the Bible in the vernacular. I believe you can have it accurately in the vernacular. People say, well, it'll never be as accurate in the vernacular as it is in the Greek. Now, understand that on a certain level, but now, since there's so much uncertainty on a certain level in the Greek that could be three different things. I mean, when you had the greatest translators in the world that ever lived, that's what they dedicated their whole life to, was translating Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic accurately. And they studied it, unlike anybody, without cell phones, without radio, without distractions, and all this for many decades. And it was a collaborative effort that, you know, you can trust they had the best. It went through like 70 processes of a winnowing process, and so you can read the Bible. So you could say you go from the uncertainty of the Greek to the certainty in the King James case of the King James, and some of you prefer the Geneva. I understand that. Some of you may even prefer the Matthews. And in Spanish, some of you like the 1602 Purita, just the plain old 1602, the 1855. Many of you like the 1960. So many out there. Some like just a 1569, Reina, before it was the Reina Valera in 1602. And so you've got the Diodate and the Luther and all this as well. All Reformation text Bibles. I'm really big on Reformation text Bibles. Trinitarian Bible Society has a lot of good stuff on that. So God bless. Hey, just read the Bible. Know that the sword of the Spirit, even in English, works. So God bless. Talk with you later. Check out our other videos. Put this on social media. Subscribe. Hit the bell notification. You may want to comment 2 sentences or less, because we've been getting people writing books in the comments. God bless. We love you.